If you wouldn't mind, let's start with an opening statement. And Mayor Aragon, maybe I'll have you go first. Introduce yourself and tell people why you're running. 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. So I'm Sofia Aragon, I'm Mayor of the City of Burien. I just want to remind folks that's actually a part-time position, and to be an equal supporter in my family, I actually do run a small business. It's a statewide nonprofit called the Washington Center for Nursing, and we're about 8 employees. The other thing is my family's had a lot of history with West Seattle. One of my favorite pictures was with my grandmother on Alki Beach when Blue Moon Burgers was actually a gas station. And there was nothing in the back. It was kind of amazing. And my husband has 2 generations here in West Seattle, and we actually lived in the Luna Park neighborhood for a while, but when affordable housing became a challenge, we landed in Burien. So I'd be happy to serve this community. My priorities are public safety. It's a core role of both cities and counties. No one else can do that. Also homelessness, and also I want to also really attack a public health crisis I think nobody else is addressing right now, which is the mental health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councilmember Teresa Mosqueda, citywide position with the City of Seattle. Well, if you wouldn't mind, a minute-long statement here to open it up. Thanks.
Wonderful. It's great to see many of you again. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have joined you over the last few years. On Seattle City Council, I've joined the West Seattle Chamber for walks around California Avenue and learned a lot from our small businesses up there. I asked one of the small businesses, what is the #1 thing you would want from me? If I could do one thing with a magic wand, what would it be? And he said, you see that empty parking lot across the street? If that empty parking lot was housing for workers and childcare on the first floor, I wouldn't have to worry about my workers making it an hour home, an hour back, if they were worried about whether or not they were going to pick up their kiddo on time. That small business owner from right here in West Seattle articulated the exact reasons that I want to continue to serve in public policy and to do it around our region. To address the housing crisis that we see across this region that's far bigger than Seattle's borders. To address the health crisis, which is only made worse when you have to commute an hour or 2 in and you're not with your family. And to create greater economic opportunity for both workers and small businesses by investing in both housing and health.
Thank you. I want to keep going down that small business path because there's clearly a lot of people interested in business here. And Councilmember Mosqueda, I'll start with you on this. King County is the largest labor market in the state. In 2021, nearly 42% of all non-farm jobs in Washington state were reported from King County located businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. What specific policies or programs will you champion to support and uplift local small businesses in King County? A minute, please.
Wow, thank you. So #1 is direct investments. We are still not out of this pandemic. I know many of us have had COVID recently. I just got my flu shot. We are all knocking on wood, wearing our masks and crossing our fingers as frequently as we can, because it is a crisis that is affecting our communities, but it's also still affecting small businesses. As the budget chair for the City of Seattle, we put millions of dollars directly in to support small businesses, specifically small businesses that are women-owned, folks of color-owned, and I want to do that at the county as well. The crisis is not over for the health of our population, nor the health of our local economy. Direct investments. #2, direct investments in additional arts and culture. I hear a lot from small businesses here in West Seattle, but across this region, about how when we couple investments in arts and culture, it actually supports our small businesses. We have the Arts Walk activities that bring out the arts and include people in our small businesses at the same time. Investing in both arts and culture while supporting small business direct investments is the second thing I would do. And #3, expediting permits. I know it takes a long time sometimes, and we need to be faster across our region.
Thank you. Thanks for working with the time frame here.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, you bet. And I want to make sure I pass along Councilmember Mosqueda. We'll have 1 minute answers here. If there's a rejoinder you want to add for 30 seconds, put up a hand and I'll make sure I bring you in. Mayor Aragon, can you speak to us a little bit about small business support in King County, if indeed you are elected?
Well, the City of Burien is a majority small business city. And I think it has a lot of similarities with the region of West Seattle, in which I look around. There is that same investment and commitment to small businesses. And for me, talking to different chambers, one of the things is they notice is there is a missing link in terms of an economic development department at the county. And cities have that. And we've really learned at City of Burien what kind of technical assistance we can provide for businesses. For example, during the pandemic, what grants were out there, we got familiar with the diversity in the languages and providing technical assistance to those businesses so they can get grants to strengthen their businesses. And so I think we can do a lot more in the county in that respect. And then also, just things to drive people to your doors. It's really important to have public safety in our commercial districts, put money into storefront repair, and also make sure that when we manage the homelessness and affordable housing crisis, to take into account these commercial centers so that all those things that we can address together.
Thank you. Mayor Aragon, let's keep going on that path of affordable housing. We have another question provided by chamber members that speaks to this. In 2022, Washington saw an increase in population to hit a total of nearly 7.8 million residents. Housing affordability is a significant concern for residents, employers, and employees alike. How will you work to balance the growing need for affordable housing with the interests of property owners and developers? 1 minute, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it's really important for government to bring people at the table. We don't know the solutions or how you see things every day through your lens. So first of all, I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the answers, but I'm going to sit down and talk with you about what your perspectives might be and the strategies you want to see. The other piece is we do need to increase density. People are attracted to where we live. It's beautiful here, but how do we do it in a way that makes sense? Well, that depends on communities. I think one of the things that I've experienced as at the county interacting as a city is that often it feels like the county can do things to you. Like they'll decide if there's more land in the county actually in Burien than we have. So we have a lot of experience of them coming in and say, well, we're gonna just do this to this lot and not really connect with us. But West Seattle is an example of you have a very unique characteristic, so we need to work with you about where does density make sense. For example, in Burien, there are major thoroughfares. We have transportation, we have retail on the bottom, we're increasing height requirements, and make sure that infrastructure is there to support all of that.
Thank you. Some thoughts about affordable housing, Councilmember Mosqueda?
Can you repeat the full question?
Yeah, sure. There were a lot of stats thrown in there. So in 2022, there was an increase in population. Let me get to the beef of this here. Housing affordability is a big concern. Here it is. How will you work to balance the growing need for affordable housing with the interests of property owners and developers?
Great. So the interest is really an economic security issue for both workers and small businesses. If we do not have enough housing in this region, we do not have enough workers. I see this across West Seattle. I see it in White Center. I've heard it from the employers on Vashon Island who say there might be streets on Vashon Island filled with tourists on the sidewalk, but businesses are closed because we do not have enough workers to actually keep our doors open at the height of tourist season. So investments in housing is absolutely an economic stability issue for employers as well as workers. Number one, I want the county to invest more direct dollars into working on building housing, especially in the unincorporated areas and in partnership with the jurisdictions, specifically in District 8. That includes West Seattle, that would include Burien and Tukwila, as well as the unincorporated areas. Number two, I want to waive the utility hookup fees for our small developers who are small businesses, often nonprofit, who are talking about how they have to pay exorbitant fees to actually pay for hookups. And number three, expedite the process. Vashon has added $5 million to a project because they had to wait 5 years to get the approval from the county. That's something that we can solve at the county.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears to homelessness with you if I could, and I wanted to speak specifically to the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. As we all know, we've seen the headlines out there. The agency has seen a lot of issues over the past year. Abruptly, we saw that Mark Dones, the CEO, stepped down in May. We've seen some of the reports, too, about the audits that have revealed some of the financial problems with that agency. I wanted to talk about that. Do you still trust the KCRHA? And just talk about that and maybe your response to homelessness overall, because that piece of it is an important part about how the county responds to homelessness. Can you start, please, Councilmember Mosqueda?
Yes, thank you. I had the pleasure of working with Councilmember Sally Bagshaw and the executive in King County, as well as other county council members, to help be the backbone to set up the Regional Homelessness Authority. I believe that the success of the Regional Homelessness Authority is imperative for us to solve the crisis of homelessness. Folks do not recognize the borders between Burien and Seattle when they're searching for a place to put their head down and the services they need. We have to address this as the regional issue it is. The three things I would do: number one, ensure that the Regional Homelessness Authority is actually paying their contractors. They have outsourced, we have outsourced much of the work to nonprofit developers. Imagine running your business and not knowing if you were going to get paid on a monthly basis. We have to pay those contractors on a regular basis. Number two, we have to invest in the workers to make sure that they have sustainability. We're talking about 30, 40, 50% turnover rates within many of these organizations. At Seattle, I invested in a cost of living increase, and we're about to add another additional pay for the human service providers so that there's less turnover. And number three is ensure that there's long-term funding for the Regional Homelessness Authority so we can address it as a regional crisis.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind, Mayor Aragon, some thoughts about what's going on with the KCRHA. Do you support it, where you want it to go, and your thoughts about homelessness?
Well, the KCHRA needs help. I've worked with it really closely because we were in the front lines of a homelessness crisis in Burien. You probably have read at least one article of what we were going through since last March. And it's absolutely critical that the KCHRA maintain this mission that homelessness should be addressed in a regional way. Burien is a very small city, and I have lots of experience working with my neighboring cities to be, how could we do this together? And right now, we just don't have that connective tissue to bring us together and say, what's a fair distribution and collaboration so that we can help distribute the types of shelters we need, emergency housing, which is basically non-existent, transitional housing, which is non-existent, and lessons learned. Okay, we've all invested in affordable housing. We have 4 different models going up in Burien that we started at the beginning of my term. Are any of them up? No, they're not. So you have to take the lessons learned and say, where are the gaps? And then that's what we need the Homeless Regional Authority to focus on.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on to a question about public safety. And again, a big thanks to the chamber members supplying these questions. Retail theft and public safety concerns deeply impact residents' ability to operate their businesses and feel safe in their communities. How do you plan to collaborate with law enforcement agencies to ensure public safety while also addressing concerns related to police reform and community policing? Mayor Aragon, can I have you start on this one, please?
Sure. One of the things I supported in Burien is a storefront officer. And actually, we've been suffering from officer shortages the last actually for as long as I can remember. The defund the police movement did not help. I think that actually exacerbated that shortage. But the storefront officer does things that I think people don't realize law enforcement can do, such as build relationships with the businesses and see what's really needed at the ground level, provide some education, provide some techniques like public safety by environmental design. How do you design your surroundings so that you are more safe? In terms of working with the police community, I think they're really vital, but I do know we cannot dismiss the reports of bias or discrimination. There still needs to be a cultural reform, and as a government and as a county, that's one of our critical roles. We do need to work with our police department for accountability and see how we can have a more culturally responsive workforce.
Councilmember Mosqueda, the question was collaborating with law enforcement agencies. How do you do that and ensure public safety while also addressing concerns related to police reform and community policing? 1 minute.
Wonderful, thanks. I think it's multifaceted. Number one, direct support for small businesses. Immediately responding to the need that they have for additional flexible resources is something that I invested in at the City of Seattle. Working with small businesses both in West Seattle and on the Seattle side of White Center, we heard about a number of businesses who said, I just need flexible dollars, whether it's a broken window that they're experiencing, a theft that they're experiencing, or just the crisis of the ongoing COVID pandemic. We want to free up flexible dollars and have a fund. That's what I did at the city for flexible dollars for businesses to respond to any incidents of crime. On the prevention side, I want to double down on the investments that the Sheriff's Office shared with folks in West Seattle just earlier this week. In the North Highline and White Center conversation we had, the Sheriff's Office was talking about how we need to invest more into lead and co-lead, pre-arrest diversion strategies so that officers aren't showing up for what the detective called crimes of survival. That is coming from the Sheriff's Office at King County, and that's the both and approach, investing in officers and the prevention side so that more small businesses don't get broken into in the first place.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears to talking about drug crises and drug issues. And Councilmember Mosqueda, I'll start with you. At the county level, King County is poised to have the most fentanyl overdose deaths it has ever had. How do you fight that? And it's tough to keep it to a minute, I know, but let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Actually was watching a number of documentaries this weekend on the crisis of the fentanyl crisis, opioid epidemic, and the real, I think, problem of having those companies target individuals with a product that they knew was highly addictive. This is an issue that is pervasive throughout our country. What I heard in that call earlier this week with the Sheriff's Office talking to the Community Council was direct strategies to try to get people into treatment. The Sheriff's Office talked about how they want to continue to expand their partnership with LEAD and co-lead through the Public Defenders Association and direct investments to community organizations like Community Passageways. Those are similar types of programs that I've invested in. We know that our current jail Executive Constantine has talked about this. He's endorsed me. He said that we have so much overpopulation and an unhealthy situation in our jails right now. Sending people to jail is not the solution, but what the sheriff's office underscored this week was helping people get into treatment instead of getting arrested and going to jail is a both-and approach. It doesn't change the state's policy, it helps provide a mitigation strategy on the front end, and that's what I'd like to do.
Thank you. Mayor Aragon, talking about this idea of overdose deaths, opioids are certainly a big culprit here. How do you fight that?
And it's absolutely a tragedy. Our state is becoming the fastest rate of overdoses in the nation. We had 3 times the number of children die of overdoses between 2019 and 2020. It's the greatest killer of people over the age of 30. And while our strategies are all needed, they're focused at the crisis point. And frankly, as a health provider, that is too far down the line, because I know that when somebody is in the throes of substance use, it's a trap. And then it's a lifelong process to get out of there. And you have to manage your life around this thing that literally haunts you. Unless you take fentanyl and you die, and that's the other crisis. So what I was really focusing on is prevention. So in Burien, I'm working with schools because we have to talk to them at an early age about what are the dangers and risks they are looking for, because we have to get out of the mindset about drug use as a choice, and it might be a choice that one time, but at least we can educate people about what they're getting into. In terms of the interface with criminal justice, we didn't blink to side with the legislation on drug possession, because we need every lever we can to urge people into services.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on if that's okay with you. It felt like there might be something you wanted to say about that. 30 seconds.
Sure. So I think the number one thing that we need is landing zones. The firefighters, Local 27, who've endorsed me, talk about how there's no place to bring people. Firefighters, police officers, human service providers say there's no landing zone. Thanks to you and the voters of King County, we now have the crisis care levy. Standing up those 5 crisis care levies in funded centers is going to be critical for us having a solution to the first responders and the human service providers who are seeing people who they know their names, they know the crisis they're experiencing, they have nowhere to bring them. That's, I think, part of the huge solution.
Thank you. I'll just out of fairness, another 30 seconds on this, if you'd like.
In terms of the Blake decision? Oh.
Yeah, we were also talking about the crisis care levy. I just wanted to open it up.
Crisis care levy, I supported as well, but again, it's at this end point, and it's actually 2 years away from even planning and figure out where they are. And I'll just say, the city of Burien, our partners, welcome the opportunity to host a crisis center in our areas because we need it that much more. But I just want to say, as an educational standpoint, in terms of this, the pre-arrest diversion, that's why we had legislation, because that's a failed policy. We tried that, and it was a great vision, but nobody set up the system. So while we tried to do some outreach to people in the streets who were suffering, there was nowhere to actually divert them to where to go. So we need to build that if we're going to commit to it.
Thank you. I feel like we could take the whole half hour on that, but I want to move on if I could. And Mayor Aragon, I'll start with you. A question here about transportation infrastructure. What initiatives would you support to improve transportation infrastructure and address traffic congestion throughout King County? And how would that benefit local businesses? A minute, please.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need transportation that connects us everywhere in the county as fast as we can. It's the story of South King County that people who used to live in Seattle will migrate over to where we are because of more affordability. So naturally, we have a huge population that comes back and forth from Burien, Seattle, the rest of the District 8, or to the east side. So we really need a connected system. And that includes the Washington State ferries here in District 8. I know that is more of a Washington State legislature issue, but we could leverage that and be a partner and really urge them to really strengthen that part of it. And transportation also needs to be safe. I grew up in South Seattle, and my grandmother did not know how to drive. She immigrated here at the age of 55, and guess who was accompanying her to go window shopping downtown? And that was me. And I think about the situation where there's smoke and open drug use in the bus, and I can't even imagine her taking me downtown literally, or even her getting on the bus to even get to work. So the safety on the bus is something we need to address also.
Thank you. Not to mention what happened on the H line not too long ago down in White Center. Councilmember Mosqueda, some thoughts here, initiatives you would support to improve transportation infrastructure throughout King County, and how would that benefit local businesses?
I think one of the best things that we can do is get more people to come to the peninsula and to our region. The best way to do that is to make sure that there's regular and frequent transit options, and I'm including ferries in there. When I go to Vashon Island, as I do regularly now since I've announced this race, people talk about how hard it is to get over on the regular ferries and how limited the hours are for the King County water taxi. I want to increase the water taxi frequency both for West Seattle and make that routine and regular as Executive Constantine has done, but also create a water taxi that is frequent and regular at Vashon and Maury Island, and create those little buses that we have. I take the 773 down to the waterfront all the time to take the water taxi over. That gets people out of their cars and it gets them enjoying our commerce more. Number two, helping to make sure that our buses arrive on time. I'm the only person who has all of the unions that I've endorsed in my race, and the ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union members, say yes, they want to have more routes, they want to have more workers, they appreciate the pay, but they need the maintenance invested in. Maintenance, because fleet is sitting there not being used. That's a number two thing that we can do to get people out of vehicles and into our shops.
Thank you. A lot to cover here, I know. Wanted to make sure I threw in a question here about equity and inclusion. I'll start with you, Councilmember Mosqueda. King County is the #1 most diverse county in Washington State and is growing in these demographics. How do you plan to ensure that economic opportunities and resources are distributed equally and equitably across different communities within the county? How will you actively engage with and gather input from these diverse communities within King County to ensure that their perspectives are considered in the decision-making processes? So a lot to consider there. Equity and inclusion is the bottom line. It looks like we're focusing on business for sure.
Excellent. So number one, I think that's really important when thinking about race and ethnicity, not to treat any demographic as a monolith, right? We saw the consequences of doing that within the Chinatown International District when it came to placement of a housing facility. Some entities were reached out to and talked to, but not all community organizations and individuals in the CID felt like they were reached out to. We need to make sure to not treat race and ethnic groups as a monolith and having one person speak for everyone. That's a really important issue. Number two is creating job opportunities. King County, as you mentioned, very diverse. King County can be a hiring entity trying to bring in more folks of color, more women of color who are on the front lines experiencing the highest rates of death and contracting of COVID. We should be thinking about how we do hiring at King County that helps provide economic opportunity for folks as a direct hirer, and also within the small businesses and union apprenticeship jobs that we have throughout District 8. District 8 could be a hiring hall if we invest in partnership with unions, small businesses, and large businesses to get more folks into good living wage jobs.
Thank you. Mayor Aragon, some thoughts about equity and inclusion, making sure that opportunities are distributed equally across different communities, and also how to engage with these different communities to get their input and make sure it matters.
Absolutely. Well, appropriate investment in an adequate police force is crucial for response to our really key and unique cultural centers like the International District, which is in the state. The Asian community actually is the second largest racial community in District 8, and they have not had anybody on the King County Council to represent that community in over 40 years. And I think people in the International District can feel that. The other piece about DEI, in terms of small business, and I mentioned in the city of Burien that we have an economic development department, and we were really able to talk with small businesses that may be of people who are immigrants, that had perhaps language barriers because reading government contracts or grants, and we were able to assist them. And so that's bringing together those various ethnic chambers, Filipino Chamber, Chinese Chamber of Commerce, groups like Tabor 100. And then finally, I want to say with public safety in terms of the police force, that also needs to be diversified because that really helps building connections with community.
Thank you very much for that. 30 seconds if you'd like to add something.
Excellent, thank you. I would love to also thank the members of the CID. Chinatown International District overwhelmingly supported me in the primary. That was very much telling of the work that I've done with them and how I've engaged with the diverse community in the CID. And I'm really excited about the diversity of District 8 and the county. County's never had a Latina or a Latino ever elected at King County Council. And with a population of nearly half people of color and nearly a quarter immigrants and refugees, I think people are not only excited about diversity and greater representation, but someone who wants to listen to the diversity among different ethnic and minority groups and also across business and labor. That's me.
Mayor Aragon, just out of fairness, I want to make sure I give you an extra 30 seconds on this DEI topic if you'd like.
Well, again, on the core role of the county as well as the city in terms of providing public safety, we have been intentional in Burien to hire a police force that's really reflective of our community. We're a majority. The Hispanic community is the largest community we have in the city of Burien, and we made sure we had bilingual officers that were actually out there so they can provide that education, they can create those relationships with communities, and be that partner with them instead of something to fear. And also on the AWC Legislative Committee, we put recruitment and retention of law enforcement #1 on their legislative priority list.
Thank you. Association of Washington Cities, thank you for breaking that down. Well, here's the deal. We're at the lightning round time, which I know is your favorite part of any forum here. We'll try to keep this short if we can. Maybe a sentence would do it. Mayor Aragon, I'll start with you on this one. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be, and how would you use it, hopefully, for good? What do we got?
I don't need the superpower would be I don't need to sleep.
No.
And so do what I do now, additional 6 hours a day.
Okay. Councilmember Mosqueda, superpower, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, to construct housing faster?
Okay. Okay, we'll see how that goes. I'll start with you on this one, Councilmember Mosqueda. Beach vacation or forest retreat?
Beach vacation.
Beach time, okay. Mayor Aragon?
Beach.
It's all about that beach. Beach, please. Here we go. Our next one here, Mayor Aragon. Night owl or early bird?
Ooh, early bird, and I can't even help myself.
Okay. Councilmember Mosqueda.
Night owl.
Okay, all right. We got people getting the worms on either side of the day. I like it. Councilmember Mosqueda. Audiobook listener or book reader?
Ooh, book reader.
Okay. Mayor Aragon.
Book reader, much better for the imagination.
I like it. Okay. Mayor Aragon, start with you. Favorite movie?
Star Wars.
Awesome. Okay. What do you got?
My favorite movie, oh my gosh, this is a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I know. Star Wars was a big one. I mean, maybe, because I'm a fan. But any thoughts about that at all?
Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise. I love it. Why not? Sounds good. All right, this is getting a little too groovy, but we'll see how this goes. Your astrological sign, Councilmember Mosqueda.
Cancer.
Cancer, okay.
Aries.
Ooh, both pretty saucy, don't you think? Yeah. I will say this. Can we give our candidates a big round of applause? Thank you. That lightning round is always a little difficult. But just to get things wrapped up here, it is time for a closing statement. I'd like to offer that for a minute here. And Mayor Aragon, I believe you'll be speaking first, and then Councilmember Mosqueda, give you the last word.
Well, I just wanted to fill a couple of gaps that I hadn't had the opportunity to share with you. In the city of Burien, we actually are putting up 4 affordable housing models, and that's the way we learn about what are some different ways we can provide affordable housing. So 2 of which, expanding Habitat for Humanity, so that's up to 80%, Eco-Thrive cottages, and what's important about those things is enable people with low incomes to actually gain equity, which is one of the traditional ways that we can provide generational wealth to people. We also are building the first DESC, permanent supportive housing, outside of Seattle to take care of those who are who have long-term homelessness due to mental health or substance use issues. And finally, commercial and affordable housing, mixed commercial units, and I'll just say from our experience, that's faster. The other piece, code response models in terms of safety, it started in the South Sound. We have lots of experience with nurses and social workers supporting our fire departments and police, but I just will say that while we need that support, it is not a replacement for the public safety, for the officers that we need.
Okay, thank you very much. 1 minute of closing statement, please, Councilmember.
Thank you so much. It's really good to see neighbors. I live just down the hill on Nevada Street in North Delaware in the Luna Park area. Our kiddo is just turned 4 this week, and we go to a number of parks around the area. Especially during COVID, this was our universe. We walked to small businesses in West Seattle. We walked to our parks. We walked to get grocery and food at our local establishments. I'm really excited about the community that we're building here in West Seattle, and I want more people to be able to live in this region and be able to work in your businesses. To me, investments in small businesses is investments in the social determinants of health. My family is, I'm now 3rd generation, my family comes from a long line of small business owners, and my dad, when he was growing up, was very much growing up in poverty. My grandparents started Tasty Tacos in Des Moines, Iowa, the year that he went to college, the first and only of 6 children to go to college. And it's now in its 65th year, and is voted best taco every year in Des Moines. It got him, my aunts and uncles, my entire family, and my grandparents out of generational poverty. That's the opportunity that we invest in when we invest in small businesses. So I look forward to continuing the conversation and learning from all of you as we move forward.
Thank you both. Another big round of applause. Thank you. And now let's bring candidates to leave the stage, and I'll bring Rachel Porter back up here. Big thanks to the West Seattle blog for coming out as well. Thanks, everybody. And here's Rachel.